You thought I was dead, but I'm not. I've returned mid-COVID to do a little bit of miniature comparison. Not all of that opening statement was a joke, by the way. I'm sure some of you did think I was dead, but I genuinely do have COVID again, and it's really bad this time round. However, I can't just sit around all day. I've got things to do. There's stuff I want to do, and there's videos I want to make. Starting with this one, which is sponsored by Revenants Run, which you may have heard of before, because we did a video about Revenants Run a little while back. Revenants Run is a one-page rules-compatible sci-fi miniatures campaign that contains both STLs and physical models for those of you who do not have 3D printers at home. One of the things that I was excited about when I was approached by Revenants Run is the fact that when we've done videos talking about like STLs before, or miniatures that you have to download and print at home, there's always been quite a number of people who've gone, well, this looks really cool, but I can't actually access this. I don't have a 3D printer at home, I don't have a resin printer, and whilst resin printing is extremely accessible at this point in terms of like price, you can pick up a decent printer for under 200 quid now, which is, I mean, it's madness when you think about it, being able to just print stuff at home for, frankly, not that much outlay initially. It's also a question of space. It's a question of space, it's a question of things like, what do you do with the resin that you have to mess with, given that it's horribly toxic and really quite dangerous? The fact that they give off, like, noxious fumes and stuff that you really shouldn't be around for any length of time. There's any number of reasons as to why having a 3D printer at home isn't a viable option for those who may have the cash but not the inclination, but Revenants Run has got around that by offering both physical and STL miniatures. The physical one, which you can see directly in front of you. Now, these are done using 3D printing. They are printed by the manufacturer and then shipped to you. But because you also get STLs from this campaign as well, you have a couple of options. I wanted to print off some of the models myself so that we could do a comparison between what you could do at home and what you get in terms of the product being shipped directly to you. So you just pay for the model, it arrives at your door, same as any other physical manufacturer, or you can get the STL. What are the actual differences? Well, something I'm noticing as I look at the picture right in front of me is that one of the major differences is that they are better at cleaning up prints than I am, because there are things on this particular tortoise, as it is known, I did not even notice as I was taking these images first time round, which means that I have missed a few things that frankly stayed on there until this miniature was both primed and painted, so that's a real shame for me, isn't it? Now, something important to note is that mine were printed on an Elegoo Saturn II, which is an 8K resin printer, and that does have an effect on the quality of the model, undoubtedly. The higher the resolution, if we're going like super basic, the higher the resolution, the more detailed the model is. There is, of course, variations in terms of like what resin you use, what settings you've got it at, whether there are any issues during printing. There's a whole list of things that can affect like the overall quality of a finished print, but when it comes to the basic outline of it, the higher the resolution, generally speaking, the better the detail on the finished model. And I think it's fair to say that the one that I've printed out here, compared to the one that was sent, is pretty decent. It does hold up fairly well. It's not been cleaned up as well, that's entirely my issue, but overall it is pretty solid. I will say that my initial thoughts putting them next to each other, there's definitely like a certain sharpness that is not quite there on the home printed one. Now, I'm not entirely sure why that is. I did think maybe it was the colour of the resin might make a difference, but I don't think it really does. You can see all the highlighted areas the same. They were photographed in the same light box with the same lighting conditions. One of them has come out slightly more exposed than the other in terms of the pictures taken, but that doesn't really affect how crisp or neat a model looks. It's little things like the cloth between the legs. I feel like the cloth on the production miniature, the edges are just slightly better. The sort of wrap elements around the upper legs as well, they are just that bit more crisp and clean than the ones on the home printed version. Now, before we go any further, this video is sponsored by Revenants Run, a new range of tabletop miniatures available in STL or physical form. Revenants Run is one-page rules compatible with cards for 2 full factions designed and available to download for free. But if you're not into one-page rules, there are so many different models in here that you could use as proxies for your favourite sci-fi tabletop wargame, whatever that might happen to be. There's a huge range of miniatures, from bikes to scouts to knights to tanks to mechs. There is going to be something here for everyone. Thank you very much to Revenants Run for sponsoring the video. Let's get back to it. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with the home printed one. The home printed one is absolutely fine, and it's the sort of quality that I have gotten used to using an 8K printer in terms of my home printed models, where it's more than acceptable, right? When you consider how far 3D printing has come, like, the fact that now you're able to produce something of that standard at home over the course of a few hours, it still kind of blows me away to think about it. Now, when it comes to these 2 scouts, once again, I'm super happy with how the home printed versions come out. Like, the detail has come out really, really nicely. Things like the cloth have come out super well. The kind of like fur edges around the knee pads as well have come out nicely. I've just noticed that I missed like 2 tiny supports on the home printed one. Again, that's a me thing. That's not something that you might necessarily expect from stuff that you print. You might do a better job of it than I did. But overall, it does look pretty good. I'm inclined to say the same sort of thing with the cloth wrap around the middle of the model is just that bit more crisp and detailed. You can see that it's almost like blown out slightly on the home printed one where it isn't on the production model. But to be honest, I'm a little bit biased when it comes to this side of things, because for me the most important thing between these 2 models is the cloak. If the cloak came out well, then I'm happy, because I love the cloaks on these. And you know what? The cloak did come out really, really nicely. I'm super happy with the cloak. I will say that it's not quite got the same depth, like especially over the head. The depth of the kind of gap between the different hexagons, it's not quite as pronounced as it is on the production model, but apart from that, it's pretty decent. The hem is definitely a little bit shaky. There's just certain sections that aren't 100%. I think there's certain sections that aren't 100% right on the one that I printed, which is interesting. I'm not sure why that would have happened, but then again, that's not necessarily something that you need to worry about with a production miniature, because in terms of quality control, you're not going to get something that's got like an egregious error with it. Whereas I would say that there's definitely some lumpiness going on at the base of the cloak on the home printed one that, looking at it on the picture, I'm not that happy with. Admittedly, I don't think you could really tell if you held it up in front of you, and in fact I didn't notice at the time. But yeah, looking at them a bit closer, there's definitely something going on there. Now, something I don't have a direct comparison for is the roller droid that I printed. I didn't receive a production model for this particular sculpt, but I'm really happy with how it came out. There's a lot of fairly good detail in there that came out pretty crisp, pretty nice. And I'm inclined to say, out of what I printed, it might be the best one in terms of overall detail. The edges have come out really nicely on pretty much every single surface, and the little like fan that's on the back of the power pack, that actually came out really nice. I am pretty happy with how my prints came out, to be honest. It did take a while to get them there, but that is a fault of... I don't even know if it was the printer or the person trying to get the printer to work. All I know is that for quite a significant amount of time, my Saturn II did not want to do anything. And you could, don't do it, you could sit there and go, maybe it's a problem with the STLs you were given. No, I would have actually preferred that to be the case, because then I could have gone back and gone, hey, there's an issue, could you take a look? And then have been able to do something about it. But instead, what I found was that no matter what I tried to print, nothing worked. And then it just worked. Which, I mean, 3D printers are still printers. They're still the spawn of Satan, and they still hate us. So, to be fair, just one of those things, isn't it? Now, I did do a quick cheeky little paint job on these as well. I tried a different colour scheme to the first lot that we did, because I just wanted to see what the armour would look like if I did my very lazy dry brushing of metallics onto armour technique, and I actually really like how it came out. Admittedly, it's not quite to the standard that I was hoping to get them to, but I've not been able to really paint or do anything for a solid week. And for some reason, with this particular onset of COVID, opening up Streaking Grime, I got one whiff of that, and almost died from coughing. So Streak and Grime was not an option to finish off these miniatures, which is kind of the whole point of how I paint armour. But you know what? I'm pretty happy with how they came out anyway. Literally all I do for armour like this is just dry brush up from black to a light silver. Just start out with like a dark metal colour, then usually lead belcher in the middle because lead belcher's class, and then a lighter silver over the top. Then I would normally do the old grim dark weathering technique of using Streak and Grime and then getting rid of most of it, but that wasn't an option this time around, sadly. So there you go, that was a fun little exercise. I quite enjoyed trying to narrow down the differences between those different prints. It was fun. I'm going to go and have a lie down. Thank you very much for your patience in waiting for the next video. I know it's been nearly a week, but I've not really been in a position to do much about it. As you can tell, I'm still not quite there, but we're easing back in. We're easing back in. It's fine. Thank you again to Revenant Run for sponsoring the video. Make sure to check them out in the description and the pinned comment down below. And I will see you for the next one. Not sure when it'll be, but there will be a next one, I promise.